we're going to get the mic to work, but in the meantime, we wanted to get started. So people will continue to come in, but we have an activity we'd like you to do. So this is the meeting on the enhancements to Arsenal Park. You're all in the right place, right? Yep. So what we'd like to do as a starting is to do some personal connection between people. So could you find a partner, preferably someone you don't know very well, and could you talk about what's one thing you value about open space in Watertown? Not necessarily about Arsenal Park, just about open space in Watertown. You get about 2.5 minutes each. So one person talks, the other person talks. I'm going to call you back in about 5 or 6 minutes. Ready, set, go.
tonight to talk about Arsenal Park, which is a town of Watertown Park. It's in the care and custody of the Conservation Commission, which I think some of you may not know. I think that's a part of it. So we have an agenda here, and then we're going to do breakout groups, and that's why you're sitting in these different tables with people you may or may not know. We're going to talk about the history of the site and the park, constraints, current uses, potential enhancements to the park, and then breakout sessions. So the potential enhancements that I'm going to talk about are just some ideas, very, very initial ideas to get you going. At the end of the meeting, there's a public process that's online where we've had a lot of different people providing all kinds of comments. We printed it out. It's on the wall as you leave the room, and it's there as well. So as far as the background goes, the Conservation Commission has the care and custody, which means that they're the decision-making body for any changes to the park. And so anything that we do during a public process will then go to the Conservation Commission for a public hearing, and they will vote on and determine what actually can be changed within the park site. I know there's some confusion about where the boundaries are, so we have the site map that you'll see later talking about the park. Let me see if there's any other pieces on the intro. This is the first meeting, and we're going to have a couple of other, or at least another meeting to talk about the outcomes of this. The goal of this meeting is to brainstorm ideas and talk about enhancements. What this meeting isn't about is how we would program existing sports fields. So I just want to make sure that we're very clear that the context of this is about design of the park, the existing conditions and future conditions, in particular enhancements to the design of the park. So I want to make sure everyone was aware of that, and it's not about how the space is being programmed or could be programmed in different ways for different user groups. Talked about the decision. The other decision makers that could be involved with this would be the DCR. There's an adjacency to the park along the south side, which is DCR property. And then there's also private property interests to the north and to the west, several of them. So that's some of the context. The site, I'm going to go into a little bit of history about the actual arsenal, because I think it's important to understand that for the background component. So the Watertown Arsenal was established in 1816. When it was established, a primary component of the park was actually the front entrance to the arsenal. The arsenal, the lower left corner here, it's kind of dark, but this area here is forested lands, and this was the main drive aisle going up to the arsenal. The river is here, and so most of this area here was actually the park, and it was the parade grounds of the original arsenal, as well as some of the undeveloped areas. Soon after that, they built some other components. In the early 1900s, they hired the Olmsted brothers and created a landscaping plan which took away the central drive aisle and the central courtyard, most of which those buildings are still here today. And so there's the Commander's Mansion, and they created this. There was a road existing here called Rodney Avenue, which is named after one of the famous commanders of the site. So here's some of the buildings that were already in existence at that time. I took a slide from the Athena Health website. They have a great history of the entire site. This was the backdrop of the plans for the arsenal from 1957, which is about the end of the period when the arsenal was still its entire piece of land before they split it up, which is getting into the next stage, which is when the period when we split it off and we got what we now know today as Arsenal Park. So in this context, there's the Commander's Mansion, there's Talcott Avenue, which is not a road, and there's Rodman Avenue, which isn't there anymore, but is mostly the dirt path that goes through the park. This building here, I think, is an interesting one. This is the slab of what is now the tennis courts. So that entire building, they expanded it in 1957 with the white components. And then all these little pieces here were commanders' houses, or officers' houses. And then here was one of the oldest officers' buildings, built in 1820. All of this was removed as part of the redevelopment to become a park. When I say removed, they didn't necessarily remove it all. So park history, in 1966, we started thinking about how this component of the arsenal could be reused. In 1978, the town purchased the park from the Redevelopment Authority, which was also a town component, for just over $1.8 million. They demolished approximately 9 buildings within the park. They didn't necessarily remove the foundations of those buildings. They just removed the buildings themselves, regraded. There was a substantial building to the north. There was all those series of officers' buildings. And then the entire component here was built as well. So building 35 and 421, this was known as building 421. It was taller than the existing Arsenal Mall building. It was 3 stories plus a peak. And it, when they came up with the design, what they did was just keep the slab and then put asphalt on top of that slab, so that the slab and foundation of that building is still there. And so this was an award-winning plan that was approved and built in, and I forgot to write the date, but just the very beginning of the 1980s, and the final part was 13.6 acres. So I've talked about the slab for building 421, which is a site constraint. There's a slab there that fills up the entire area where the tennis courts, the basketball courts, the gardens, the volleyball court, and the painting boards are located today. There's buried foundations throughout the site. The buildings that were removed were not the only buildings on the site originally. There used to be a gasification plant. There used to be a dock at the bottom where the boats would come in. So there's all kinds of things within the park that was used since 1816. There's historic features. Some of the fencing may be considered historic and may not even be on the parkland, maybe on the adjacent property. There's a riverfront buffer. If you know the park today, anywhere where there's a substantial tree cover is pretty much where the buffer line is. And you can see down on this, I took a snapshot of the river buffer, and this is 200-foot riverfront buffer running along here. And you can see that all the trees near the amphitheater running all along adjacent to the tennis courts. That's a constraint. And then there's a single access easement from the north to get into the park, into the parking area. And that access easement is across private property. So that's a constraint as far as how you enter the park. And then there's also existing uses. There's a lot of users there. It's a very actively used park, and that is another constraint that we wanted to consider. Someone at the beginning of the meeting noticed this slide and said we also didn't mention money as a constraint. It is a constraint, but it's it's something that there is some flexibility in the endpoint of that. So,
Gideon, are there contaminants on the site that are constrained?
we have not located anything that identifies contaminants on this site. There are a lot of discussions about things that have been on the site or potentially on the site, but for instance, where the slab is, I am not sure, and there's nothing that says that there was contaminants located at that. You would think that with the types of uses that were on the site, there may be some contaminants in the ground. I mean, it was from lead to arsenic to other things, but
Gideon, if I could just comment on that.
Yeah.
This is something that comes up often. And I don't think Susan Falcoff is here or anybody else from the reuse committee, but because they looked at this. That area has been studied and restudied time and time again, and there was remediation done at certain parts of the park. But by the early 2000s, the last major study that was done found that there were no significant contaminants, and it's not subject to any AUL, activity and use limitation. So, you know, it's possible, as you say, given the slab and the other stuff that's buried there, that there may be issues, but there's nothing that has been found, and it has been looked at very extensively.
And there are some. This is a picture from a similar era from that black and white of an aerial of the Arsenal. And for context, this is Arsenal Street running right here. This is the main building of the Arsenal Mall. And so this building behind it that runs like that is the footprint of what the tennis courts in that area is today. And you can see that there's some buildings scattered throughout. There's the Arsenal's tennis courts, which were actually in the same area. And this right here is the commander's mansion. And so you can get a context of how, in this building right here, is where the mound is adjacent to the condo complex to the north of the park. And so they removed this building, and the property line is about halfway down that building. And so the property line for the Arsenal Park runs like this, jogs over, runs adjacent to that, and then runs along the bluff, which is the green at the bottom of the bluff, and comes down here, and then there's Top Hat Avenue, which it's like right there, and that's the rest of it. So as you can see, even at this period in 1939, when they were in the process, I just also wanted to point out, just because it's interesting, School Street at the time still went through. So this was just when they were starting to ramp up for World War II. So I find it interesting. So even at the period when they were ramping up, they didn't use this park area for, this was their front yard still, in an area primarily, except for that one really big building, 421.
Who owns the commander's mansion? Is that Watertown?
Yeah, that's owned.
And all that land around it is part of...
Yeah. So this is a good clarification. So the commander's mansion was given to the town under a separate, when the main base was closed. And it was, so it's in our department, Community Development and Planning. I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Gideon Schreiber, Community Development and Planning. And so the commander's mansion and its entire campus is, including that area of Top Hat Avenue, is part of the town's property as well. But it's not part of Arsenal Park. It's a separate parcel, and it's under a separate review and approval process. And it has historic restrictions on it as well that are different than the Arsenal Parks. So I just wanted to show you that, and then we get into current uses. We kind of brainstormed all the uses that are going on in the park. Now, some of these are not actually happening, but they are things that are in the park. So we have these images, they're on your table. We have the cross-country course, which runs through both the east and west part of the park. The top lot, the spray park, picnic, gazebo, and grills, they kind of all go together in different ways. There's some passive paths and wooded areas. There's informal play areas. There's the official play fields that are used for soccer and softball. And there's the basketball courts. One of the basketball courts was converted for skate park. There's a community garden there now, in case you haven't been there in recent times, which is where the field hockey was located. There's 6 tennis courts. There's the tennis bang boards, which were also, Chris, can you help me out? What was the plan?
Oh, handball?
Yeah, handball.
So
So it's also, it was originally intended for handball as well. There's the volleyball court, which is actually an asphalt slab. The original plan had called it out as a sand volleyball court. That's, I don't know if anyone can remember sand sitting on that ever, but. And then there's the bocce court, which has 2 cinder block ends, and also I don't think it's been maintained. So that's.
There's no mention of the
We were testing everybody. Of course, there's the amphitheater. It's because I used that map and it didn't happen. So the amphitheater is also there, and it hasn't been used lately, but last year it actually got used by the children's, that's being used this year also for the children's dinner. So it's a nice amenity. We've heard that it's kind of noisy down there, especially when the leaves are off, and so there's some issues with that, but it's a very nice facility, and a lot of people don't even know it's there. So much so I forgot to put it on the slide. So just to start the brainstorming, there's the amphitheater, it's the shiny part, and this is the path, which used to be Rodman Avenue, apparently, or close to it. There's an open space. If you go up there, it's near the Arsenal Mall area. It's beyond the bocce area. There's actually views to the river and beyond. There's a lack of a connection, and this is the main entrance to the park. Here's a spray park that lots of people have identified over the years. We hear all the different people who have talked about different ideas of the park. So there's a lot of people that have talked about different pieces. In case you didn't know, there's a skate park. This is the bocce court area. These are the bang boards. And there's the classic Arsenal Mall sign. That's 700 and something square feet, in case you've never noticed that either. And so we just threw out some ideas of things that we've heard from people to get your juices flowing for the breakout session. And so now
Before you do that, can you take any clarifying questions that people have? Okay.
We'll go back on. Are there any questions about the presentation before we get into the breakouts? The gentleman in table 5.
I would just like to learn if we're gonna lose tennis.
So that's a question. So we're not getting into what we're gaining or losing in the park right now. We're doing a brainstorming process to talk about what is being used and what could potentially be done within the park for enhancements. So as part of this process for the park and the tennis area, we would talk about that.
You did a great job, thank you very much. One of the things that before you time, doing a great job. They do have these probably 1970-ish workout stations around.
They do.
The rest of them, what are the kind of conditions, please?
Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. I would say that they're beyond dilapidated. I don't think that people even know.
I haven't been working out there recently.
Chris and I were looking at the approved plans, and they were definitely on there. They had a different name at the time. There was someone in the back that had their hand up. Oh, is that? No.
John? right here.
Oh, John, yeah.
Have there been any surveys done of the current use? Do we have data on how the different parts of the park are being used?
Recreation keeps track of who's using which spaces, but I do know, just through observational information from the rec department, for instance, that there's a huge demand for the picnic tables and the gazebos and the grills, that basically there's more demand than there are spaces. And there's also a substantial demand, obviously, for the recreational components, sports, organized sports for the fields. But like I said, that's one very clear constraint, is at least the grass field component is where it is, and there's not other space to add on to that. I don't know if there's, there hasn't been, the basketball courts, I think, are informally used. The community gardens have been expanding and doing really well. I'm not sure if there's anybody here. That's one of the newest uses within the park. I'm not sure if there's anybody here representing the community gardens tonight, but they've talked with us, and they've successfully continued to fill up the demand, and they have a plan for the site as it grows. So that's one thing that can grow.
Is that something, sorry, just to follow up, is that something that we could consider doing as part of this process, so that we have a good handle on how much demand there is for the different parts of the park?
I think as part of the process as we move forward, based on what we hear through this public process, we would look at the actual demand for components like the tennis courts, for instance, which really come to mind, since there's 6 of them. Aaron's next, and then you're after him.
Question about those big buildings that you said were removed and the foundations that are there. Is that kind of like a deal breaker? We're not going to touch those? Or it would be a horrible idea, prohibitively expensive to actually get into that? See what's underneath it, and is it safe?
We feel that is a significant constraint as far as doing that. We feel that if you're going to do any kind of change to that area, it would be building up rather than digging down. So you could potentially change an area there to something that's different than asphalt by adding materials on top of it. But digging into that and finding out that it goes down 15 or 20 feet, it's opening up a substantial liability, and there's also a retaining wall, which is also a foundation. There's just a lot of stuff over on that side, so we found digging down isn't necessarily the right. And there's also some sewer. I mean, there's utilities over there as well. The arsenal was built as one, so some of those utilities are actually going out that direction. So there's some constraints that way as well. I didn't go into all of them. There's a utility tunnel that runs east-west. Through the whole park. We don't know what. So, Mark?
In regards to the comment about how the park is used, I've lived in 2 different units in the condos that abut the park, and both of them, the deck sits right on the property, so I get to see what goes on and I love this park. It can get really noisy, it can be rambunctious, but it is a park that is used by everyone, by organizations all over the place. The tennis courts, they're not always used, but they're used fairly extensively.
Yes,
They
yes.
haven't been,
Yes.
they haven't been resurfaced in a long time, so if you know how to play, you can hit the cracks and throw off your opponents. But I just want to say that being said, that as people are talking about the park and what can be done with it, remember that there are people that do live right next door to it. And I enjoy having the energy of the park next to where I live. It's part of what makes where I live really nice. But that needs to be, I think people need to consider that it is in a residential, even though you have the mall there, there are people that live there.
Right, and particularly in the western side of the park versus the eastern side.
There are probably, about 10 condos?
35 units total.
Right.
So just to go on, I want to keep the questions short. Lisa Feltner had her hand up first, and then,
Thank you. I just want to say, this is very exciting. It's one of the more exciting town meetings I've been at, and I love how you started with the brainstorming. And I know you mentioned, it almost sounds like you might wrap up and have one meeting to finalize. I would hope that there's another meeting like this, because so many people are gone in summer, and thank you for doing this. I hope we have another brainstorming session before.
thank you. We also have an online presence, and I want to make sure everybody's aware of that, because we have gotten some really thoughtful comments on that, and it's collecting the same information that we're collecting tonight. And if there's other ways to try to collect that information, and we will definitely take that into consideration for the process.
Yes, just
then-
going back to the tennis courts, is it possible, I don't know what the rules are to cover them, or that's just out of the question?
Yeah, that's a feasible option. So you can raise the ground up, but you can't, we wouldn't dig down, but you could raise it up.
No, cover it as a structure.
Oh, yeah, you could do that. John?
And my question has two parts, and is the Watertown ever interested in partnering with other organization for the tennis facility?
There is a potential of partnership, but I mean, that's getting into very specific, so I would suggest throwing that idea out as one of the options. Ultimately, again, the park is a conservation controlled park space, so any kind of partnership would have to be worked out there. Jonathan Bakian?
A couple of things. One, you haven't mentioned the fact that there are going to be a lot of additional residents adjacent to the park with the Arsenal Yards development. To me, that's significant. And those commercial uses. I'm kind of confused by the enhancements emphasis, in the sense that I'm wondering why you're asking about enhancements before you're asking about, I don't hear you asking about purposes and types of uses, which I would think come before enhancements.
I guess it's the same.
Explain that more?
So part of this, we just wanted to emphasize that this is primarily it's a park that's successfully accommodating a substantial number of uses, and that in general for the entire park, we are not doing a wholesale redesign of this park. It's an award-winning and very successful park that has a lot of components that are very successful. I think that people are hitting on the area, which is the east side of it, that has had a lot of components that have decayed or are not being used to their maximum capacity or ability, and so that area could be both enhancements or changes in how the park is used. And so I don't want us to limit this to enhancements, meaning we're only enhancing the existing uses. We're enhancing the park space, and so envisioning a future for this park space is very good. And you also bring up a very good point, and I think it's important because in the breakout sessions we may not get into it. You'll see on the maps that there's a component to the north that is an improved master plan for Arsenal Yards. That is a context piece to show that there's a retail component that's adjacent to the park, where we currently have tennis courts and an asphalt volleyball area. And so there is a open space that's going to be directly to the north that has retail component with potentially things like coffee shops and restaurants. outside of the park boundary, but there. And so we wanted to make sure that the plans showed that approved master plan, so that there's context for what's adjacent to it and what's going into the north, which is retail and residential on that end of the park as well.
Well, the conditions in the Arsenal Yards is another entrance to the park.
That's correct. And the Arsenal Yards approval,
Would you be kind enough to repeat the question?
the question was about the access from Arsenal Yards. And so the Arsenal Yards approval creates a publicly accessible access point to the park from the east end, which wasn't there before. The only legal access to the park historically was the main drive entrance through the mall parking lot. And so now there's a new potential opening, if the town decides that it's an opening that they want to have, because there'll be this new open space adjacent to it on the east side. So Townsend Avenue is a pedestrian and bicycle access point.
And I just want to say, in reference to Representative Heck, we do have loads of documented information in the past 7 years of rentals, and I'd be happy to supply it to them about the current formal use, not so much the informal use. I will say, a lot of people say the tennis courts aren't being used. You know, I would kind of not accept that. The past couple of years, it's really bad, because you got to put down your own lines, but there is a lot of use. But I could give you the formal use of the permits, and that might be helpful.
Yeah, we'll make sure it's part of the process that we'll document what's being used right now. Is that Kate over there had her hand up, and then there was someone over here I saw. But I do also want to make sure that I'm going to only have 2 more questions, and then I think we need to transition to the breakout sessions. I think the question and answer could go on all night, but I want to make sure that we actually interact with the small language as well. So Kate, and then you're next.
I just wanted to thank you for having this meeting, and to reiterate Lisa's comment about, hopefully we can have another one or wrap-up of some sort to consolidate all the information that we're going to have in our breakout session. But I also wanted to just follow up on the gentleman up the front who's in a butter, just saying that this is an opportunity for me to say that we need to look at all of our parks holistically and not just piece by piece, and look at them as a whole, as a community, and discuss all of that.
In case someone asks, I did want to just put a plug in for our holistic parks planning document that was adopted in 2015. And so if you want to, this is the document that we use for the entire park improvement process. It's called the Open Space and Recreation Plan. It's on the website, and I'm looking forward to the next update of that. And so that's a holistic planning process for the process. I have that everything. Our next meeting is scheduled for September 28th, tentatively. We have to finalize that, but I just want to give you that update. It's also on the PowerPoint. And last question, then we'll do the breakout.
You just answered part of my question. So I just want to clarify again about roughly timeline for the enhancement plan. Roughly when you start the process and when you finish the process,
So we've only identified the first 2 meetings because there's a 2-step process where there's a conservation approval that is required with a public hearing. So that's also a community meeting process. So right now we have this meeting and we have the next meeting. In the next meeting, we will be taking all the ideas that got generated here and giving some concept plans of what could potentially be looked at. And then we have to determine, based on that second meeting, what type of conversation that needs to be, if it needs to go to the Conservation Commission at that time, so that it becomes part of the public hearing process, where it's more of a formal meeting with them, or if there would be additional meetings through community development planning.
So for the process of enhancement of the park, extra labor and work construction, you don't have a specific.
Repeat the question.
No, this is a plan.
We can't hear the questions, I'm sorry.
What's the timeline?
It's a timeline and for the actual improvements. And so, like any planning effort, this is the planning stage. We don't know what we're doing. It may be that we are restriping some lines, and it can be done through the next capital process. So if we don't have a timeline for when we would actually do the improvements, we would have to see what those improvements would be, and then you would have to go through a process for getting the funding for that. And so it could be tied to some already approved process, or it could be something moving forward in the future.
So we need
I was
to
going to
come
I have to wrap up so we can have the public process. Is this something? You had your hand. Elliot has one last question.
I just wondered whether Chris could give us a very quick review of the existing trees, whether they're 50% are dying, 20% are in good shape.
I don't want to get into the specifics of that. For this, the most important part, and we've already taken up some of the time, is the breakouts and idea generation around the future of the park. We don't want to talk about the existing conditions.
Let's put that on a parking lot let's put that question on a parking lot. Sir, is your question urgent before we break out?
Well, it's not something that can come up any other time because I recognize that the Commander's Mansion is outside the purview of this meeting. But I would hope that the Conservation Commission plans to talk with the town about integrating the use of Arsenal Park and the land around the Commander's Mansion. Maybe.
We can, we'll put that in the parking lot as well. It is,
okay.
They really are separate types of use spaces. But I know what you mean from a connectivity perspective.
Thank you.
So we need to cut off the questions at the moment.
I really just wanted to emphasize what some other people have said. I mean, it looks like a really invested group here tonight. It looks like a really well-organized meeting, but there are a lot of stakeholders, a lot of community members who aren't here because they have family commitments stuff. So let me just say, you're talking about having the next meeting be the next step, but I really think that you should repeat this when there are more people around.
Thank you for the comment. I think he's already heard that, and they're also collecting ideas on the website. As he said, if you want to see some ideas that have already come out, lots of people have already contributed ideas. They're on the flip charts near the door there. But we're going to move on to the next part. And so, can we give a hand to Gideon for an excellent presentation? Gideon, can you help me just hold this up for a second? So our ground rules for participation, because we're going to be doing 2 rounds in our groups. And we're trying to keep these groups nice and small so that everybody has a chance to participate. So the idea here is listen to understand, and also share the airtime so that everybody has a chance to talk. So we're going to actually go around the group to get your ideas. And the last thing is, could you silence your phones or whatever other things make noise? That would be great. Thank you for that. So you have a facilitator at each table. Facilitators, could you raise your hand to make sure? Gideon, can you be the roving guy and we'll find someone else? Because people might have questions. Yeah. So Vinny, can I deploy you? There's a table down there.
Sure.
Can I see? Oh, there's no facilitator here. Mark, can I deploy you here? Vinny, at that one down there. Thank you. Thank you so much, Mark, for sitting here. Can I see hands to make sure there's one facilitator at every table? You do now, yeah. Chris, Stephanie. Super. Is there a table? I'll come there. Vinny, you're down there, and I'll come to this one. Excellent. So we're doing, right here, Mark. So we're doing 2 rounds, and in the first round, this is just verbal conversation. We don't need to capture the answer to this. The question is, when you think about what a park like this can bring to a community, what is it that people can experience that makes it worthwhile? What is it about a park that makes the experience worthwhile, that will make it worthwhile to do these enhancements? For example, do you love meeting your neighbors at the park? Do you like having a place to sit down to talk with somebody? Do you like meeting people who are walking their dogs through the park? Just a general idea. What is it that makes the experience worthwhile when you think about what the park like this can bring to the community? So the facilitators are going to go around the group, and this is a 10-minute conversation, so everybody gets 1 to 1.5 minutes to share. Questions? Ready, set, go.
Okay. Actually, a lot of people are saying that.
When you think about
just verbally talking them all, talk about the park and what you need. So you found a spot.
But also just the idea of sitting in the more wide open part of the park and walking around there or sitting on the bench and just where you can be alone in nature with that thought.
So I'll just say that that's a place for family gatherings, activities. Yeah. They're here, but they're really shabby. So these are the ones where. These definitely need on
I'll see kids riding their bikes around the outskirts of that while people are, sitting and reading a book quietly, and there's spaces to fly a kite, and there's so much to offer. I think more than any other good space in Watertown.
I agree. I mean, I think they're compatible, and
this is Tucker Avenue, that's a separate conversation, opening it or not. It's not even that much, so it's not good. I don't think it should be open, but this is, the only way that you can drive here is to drive in here and hopefully you can find a space in this tiny area. So that's actually an issue, that's not many people can actually drive there.
I'm amazed.
Before about how awkward it will be right now when this is opened up, and obviously people are going to be coming into these spaces right now is not appealing.
And it's very obscure. You sort of say, oh, it's green and it's open. I'll just keep it. But you don't know. You don't know until you're in it. Yeah. And then you walk in and you realize, oh, it's green.
I'm not so concerned about that. I think it's great. It's an awesome thing, but I feel like it's going to be very awkward since we have
Okay, folks, should we begin to wrap up this piece? Because I know that some people, hello? Can you lift your hand if you can hear me? Lift your hand if you can hear me? Raise your hand if you can hear me. Thank you. Great. So it seems like people are already mentioning some enhancements. So let's move to that part of the conversation. So as you think about the potential of the park, what enhancements could you imagine that would help realize its potential and the potential uses that you were just talking about? So at your tables, you have sticky notes. And we'd like, and the facilitators are going to help with this process, which is for you to think for a minute or two, write down your idea on a sticky note. Don't put it yet on the map. When it's your turn and we're going around the circle, then we're gonna ask you to share your idea with the group, and then you can place it on the map. In addition, some people might have ideas that you actually want to mark on the map, like you say, let's make a connection between this gate and that entrance over there, so you can actually make a mark on the map. But when we go around the circle to ask you what your sign means, then you're going to explain it. So, do you see the idea? You're either going to mark it on the map, or you're going to take a sticky note, write your idea, and then we're going to go around the group. The facilitator is going to go around the group and have each person explain the idea on a sticky note or that you've marked on the map. And I think we have about 15 to 20 minutes for that. Any questions about that? Facilitators, can you assign a note taker or offer to take the notes yourself, facilitators? Okay. Ready, set, go.
The first you guys I saw on the road that we didn't talk about much, but enhancements and I think it's this is over DCR. So it's several different groups that oversee it, no, and I agree. And I've heard that. Like even like you know, lighting over in this area. I guess what I'm saying is, this to me seems like an unusual. It's a big space. I realize, so I'd say like rethinking this.
Did you say that they don't even have nets? They have nets. Yeah, they should be redone. Yeah, that was pretty funny. No, but it'd be nice to have this again. Yeah, there's a lot of uses over here. Oh, yeah.
Our facility is
Sports field. There's a corner that just dips down. Everybody who's playing soccer knows that either that's muddy or that's just like, it's like we get on a flat field most night.
Can I add one more There's a pedestrian path here.
You can start here. You can walk here and then you're like, oh, I'm in the gravel. Why not just even have a whole, yeah, you can have a whole circuit all the way around the whole thing. And then like, yeah, and then
actually, yeah, but again, so like if you come to
much of this, it's like, they do this, go and do the workout here, and do this here, like, this is just my walk, we're not measuring. Everybody knows that Victory Field, and Victory Field, you know, if you walk a certain class, how many miles that way.
no, there's not really a fence there. Oh, yeah.
This is going to be a so it looks like these parking spaces here. Different portions of it are getting knocked down. So here's the connection. There's the one that's the other building, like this building there. This connection is knocked down. This is like all the town. This is the border. This is going to be here. Yes, we all, the apartments with shops in the back.
No,
just like in general, I feel like this is very dark. I don't think there's much lighting at all. I don't know why it was designed this way, but just seems it just seems very wide and built to it. Where is the Is the easement this part here just coming from Also, if you're over at this gazebo, somebody needs to use the bathroom. Which is probably why you're saying people are just going over here. I'll write it down, but I don't know if that's an idea. No, I said that. They can overload. But I don't know if the blue light would be massive there. It would be like, that's okay. But it's something to think about. It's a blanket. And on the blue, it's like on top of it. That's basically on top of it. You go to the handstand, and it's every they never understood. So when they were all like this, they were is that same area there? It's on the list. I like stuff where the I see a lot of skateboarding. Well, I mean, they're all
It's not all that huge. It would be lovely if there was.
See that this is not deep enough to actually, I was saying, what if you had the diamond over here, but there's really old trees here?
Because right now it's just but it's interesting that there's a lot more events moving into this area. All the and I said, I don't know what this is going to be like, so exactly. Exactly. I think that was one of the words that came up here. It is very much already changed.
We did.
So the apartments that are in the hotel, the other side buildings, changed now. A lot of it.
I feel like we're very lucky. I feel we're very lucky. I've never seen it. I feel like it seems silly to me that we have two basketball
Oh, yeah, yeah. I do see a lot of dogs. And actually, there is quite a good spot.
You're welcome to stay here.
That makes this corner less right now. It's kind of still looking at college. Okay, so
send out, and also, is there a way to know reference more usable? Yeah, right? That's something.
Yeah, she was like, no, this kind of grass, that kind of grass. Not a place for it.
Like this playground in general is kind of it doesn't really seem so it's kind of capture a lot of
Yeah, yeah. So they've
always been
yeah, yeah. So there's also, I don't know. It's like these weird rails that kind of I think they're going to add lower. Some parking is going to be set up on these buildings. Some of them are it's lovely to say that people can bike and take a bus and everything else. We all know what it's like when it's
They don't have a I think that the space that's such a fraction of is over.
Okay, can you hear me? Great. Please put your hands down. Thank you. Excellent. So how was that conversation? Did you get some really great creative ideas? Yes. I heard some great ideas. Yeah. Okay, so here's what we're going to do now. We're going to go around from table to table, and we're going to ask the facilitator to give us one idea. I hear some kind of music or something. We could dance. To give one idea that came out from your table. As we go around, please don't repeat what we've already heard, and we may have time to go around twice around the whole room, okay? Okay, so let's start over here. Andrea, give us a key idea that came up for you.
I'm going to use 2 points. Think holistically. In other words, think about uses. Did you use the microphone? Sure.
You really don't want to give me a microphone. Anyway, Table 7, the 2 things I put together that are related are think holistically and think about the uses in 50 years. As one of the people at the table said, the park was designed in about 50 years ago. So think about what the park will be in 50 years.
Sorry.
Let's see, Mindy's table. Give us an idea.
Okay, we discussed lots of things. What do you think, guys?
Yeah, preserve the beauties.
Well, preserve, so one of the things is maintain forested areas, protect the trees. New trees need to be big and beautiful. So one of the key features of this park is it's very heavily forested, and we really want to both maintain and enhance.
What do you got, Ingrid?
We have many ideas. But one of them was soundproofing the wall that is going to be at the amphitheater, so it will not disturb other people who are doing things at the park. And if I can say one more, somebody also mentioned tennis for the tennis people to have some kind of a wall for tennis practice.
Oh, yeah,
that's it.
Well, picnic gathering, so covered picnic tables, whatever. And more picnic tables. And more.
I'm at the science table here, added stormwater mitigation. So I'd like to add, because that's pretty broad, but I'd like to add one more. Keep current with the changing needs of the community. As more people are moving into this area, there are going to be bigger needs, there are going to be more needs. Got to keep current with those needs.
We're going to go with this one because this is probably something that everybody didn't think about. And it's some type of a cinder path or a wood chip path around the perimeter of the park.
We did. Yeah. Here we go. Jamie.
Our group had thought about the placement of existing features in the park, and we thought that mounding the area where there's the tennis courts and a lot of those playing sport areas, making that a more passive, open space, lawn, pavilion area would work well. We thought that we could reforest the amphitheater area since it's not working well currently, and then possibly condense some of the parking near the entryway to maximize open space in that part of the park, and potentially relocate some of those sports fields to that area.
Very creative group of people.
So our group really doesn't like the location of the bathroom in relation to the playground. I think that we either need to add a bathroom or relocate the playground closer to the bathroom. So that works. Yes.
So that's idea 10.
Oh, we'll have another chance. Okay. So my group.
Signage is a big deal. I don't think a lot of people know how to actually get into the park off of Arsenal Street. It's a little bit confusing. So we feel that signage is a big deal. It needs to be a little bit clearer. And then parking. We also feel there's not enough parking there at the park. We feel that we need to enhance the east side of the park. There's not a lot of activity going down there, so better access. There's not enough access down there.
The word here is access.
lights, so we started out, sorry, with just lights by the tennis courts, and then others thought the overall park, athletic fields. And this was for a safety issue, I think. We weren't sure how late, I'm looking for Peter, how late are the parks open?
Presently 8 o'clock. Remember, there used to be lights on the tennis courts back in the 70s, early 80s.
So for safety, for usage, and then aesthetics came up in this group. They told me to say through
Peter, what happened to those lights that used to be there?
The poles were not in good shape, so we had to take the ballast down. The poles wouldn't pull over. They've been taken down. They weren't working, and then the poles had to be taken down because the weight of the lights potentially could have fallen down.
Okay. All right, so we need that piece fixed. So we're going to do round 2. Please don't repeat what people have already said. And as you hear, there's a lot of overlap between the ideas that groups came up with.
One of the ideas was to remove a couple of the tennis courts and replace it with a small soccer field for children under 6 years old, just because the large one obviously doesn't fit. And then we had another idea, which was the fountain and a flower garden. Fountain and flower garden.
We said
One of the things we talked about was sort of connections down to the river. You know, that right now it's not easy if you're in the park or if you're on Arthur Street to get to the mall down to the river, and you know, sort of leveraging perhaps what the developers doing on this eastern edge, but sort of.
Sorry, can we have quiet because we can't really hear. Thank you.
But a way to sort of get through the chain link fence along the river and sort of open it up through pathways and stuff so people actually can get down to the river. The river can actually be sort of an extension of the park itself.
So people can get down to the river and also people can access the park from the river.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
two ways. Yes. Do you have another one over here?
The blue thing. The blue lights? The blue lights for safety? All right, go with that one. Yeah, so just some way to have, again, sort of a safety concern as you're at the park. So if you're out here walking later at night, is there some way that you can call for help?
Just in case your cell phone doesn't work.
Yeah.
More, again, I'm going to pick on the top couple because they're more general to the process, but that open up the process, partnerships for some of the uses like was suggested in the question session for like the tennis courts or other uses, maybe like a new pool, and that the constraints in terms of the overall planning exercise are not real, they're artificial. Things like the slab or other constraints, it should be more holistic.
So we think that the
Constraints are not, they're not really constraints, is that the idea? Or that they're malleable?
They might limit some of the ideas that we're generating.
Right, that's why they're called constraints.
Well, but let's come up with the ideas and then see if there's better.
Oh, I see. What do we got for idea? Clever idea. Excellent. Okay, Mark, what you got?
This time I'm going to go with an idea of maximizing the use of the tennis courts by enclosing them and providing maybe a public viewing area so that the tennis courts could be used all year long.
Let's bring the U.S. Open to Watertown.
Our group emphasized the importance of having east-west and north-south way to move through the park.
east, west, north, south, what?
Access ways through the park.
Oh, access. That can
Another way, right? Chris?
Our group has a problem with some of the regular maintenance in this park, sinking sidewalks, picnic tables falling apart, benches in tough shape. So going forward, regular maintenance of this park.
So the splash pad, as it's called on the map, someone had recommended enhancing, expanding it. So it's not just fun for kids, but also a visual attraction for people of all ages. And some of the models that they we're referencing Trapella Road, Belmont, Spray Deck, if anyone's familiar, and then down in Boston on Federal Street, there's another relatively one.
Stephanie, what is a spray deck?
Well, who knows of the one in Belmont?
The
It's
spray
similar
park.
to what we have. Spray park.
We have more covered spaces, additional bike racks throughout the park, not maybe just in one spot. And benches for more people can sit.
More comfortable then.
So one of the main concerns we had was the bike path access that will be going through the park. We think it needs to be a thoughtful and well-designed path with the feature of potentially heavily used new access from the Watertown Cambridge Greenway down to the Riverway.
Did we get everyone twice? Did we hit everyone? How did we do in terms of generating ideas?
Lot of overlap.
Lots of overlap.
Barely scratched the surface, really?
Yeah. Lots of stuff on these papers.
Yes, so great. So people did, I saw excellent note-taking, facilitators took notes, and CPG is going to collect all of them. Olivia, yes?
I just wanted to go back to what Mike Vitoli said, because I thought it was really important to really not look at all these constraints, because our group came up with the idea that having some wandering path that connects that beautiful green space by the Commander's Mansion through to the park. Because right now they're treated as two separate properties, and as Stephen said, Stephen Kennedy is sitting to my right, said we keep chopping our town up into these little pieces that you could only do this here and this there, and we need to unify our community, not keep separating it out. And I think that's a very important piece when we're talking about connectivity.
Was that captured in your suggestions?
Did you
It's
answer
not
that one or not, Ingrid? I can't remember.
So lots of overlap in the ideas, really great idea generations. Let's give ourselves a hand for that. Yes, hello?
It's kind of cute.
So I have a little bit of a comment regarding connecting Commander's Mansion with the park. We do numerous amount of events, so it's very hard when you have a private event going on with the wedding for 200 people to have the public just being able to walk through that property. Because that's not fair to the couple who rented out that house or to the group that rented out to that house to have the public coming in and out. So I would feel a little bit strongly about not having such an easy access from one point to the other.
Does the mansion belong to the town?
Yes. And just another clarification is that there's actually, there is a path along the bottom of the Commander's Mansion, which is the Commander's Mansion property, and then it seamlessly transitions into Athena Health's campus. That's all an approved path corridor that goes through the Commander's Mansion's property and onto Athena Health's campus. And it integrates in. What's missing is any kind of wayfinding signage at the bottom on what we call Talcott Avenue. So you wouldn't know that there's the path. It's gotten grown over or lost over time. So it's actually it's a cinder path. It's on the Athena Health campus. I mean, I've seen this on comments actually. They think that the Frisbee golf is part of Arsenal Park. Well, no, it's actually all on Athena Health's campus. But that's a use that's adjacent to the park and adjacent to the Commander's Mansion property as well.
I'm the track coach and cross-country coach in Watertown. We run we run the perimeter of the area we're talking about now. Then we cross Talcott Street and run along that cinder path, and actually we have to clear it out each year before it gets overgrown a little bit.
Poison ivy.
Poison, but it's coming. And then we run through the Athena area. We kind of loop around both. There's a cinder path up right behind the Commander's Mansion that we run, and then all back to the parcel of land we're talking about now. And it's an absolutely beautiful course. I was talking to Elodia about this, and other towns come to Watertown. They can't believe that they're in Watertown, which they think of as some urban industrial area, and all of a sudden they have this beautiful park to run through, and it's a very popular course within the league for the athletes to come and run on.
With the elevation changes too, I imagine.
Yeah, it's nice to get some hills in there with it.
talking about adjoining land, is the land across from the manager's management land, is that part of the conservation and recreation land, or is that Watertown?
Scribnocket Park is owned by DCR. That part across
Yeah,
North
'cause
Beacon Street?
that's a very unused piece of property.
There's another hand.
That's the part that's DCR.
I just wanted to ask, I'm sure this manager's mansion brings in a good bit of revenue for the town?
It's self-supporting. The money that comes in is to maintain it as a historic thing. So it's not a separate.
It's not a revenue generator.
Aaron?
We're open now, because I want to share it. If this is going to be a brand new, explosive, attractive retail center, and there's going to be people shopping, bringing their families, I like the idea of having some sort of tot lot near the eastern entrance that's going to be now accessible to these retail shoppers, because when I go shopping with my wife, and I got the kids with me, all I want to do is get the hell out of there. She wants to browse around the racks, and my kids, I
So
need
a
to
tot
jump
lot.
around. I would love a tot lot right there.
Okay, top okay. Okay. Aren't we actually very lucky to have these wonderful parks in Watertown? Very, very lucky. So Gideon, I think we'd like to hear next steps.
Yeah, that's great. It's interesting. They've got this brand new computer system, and apparently it goes to sleep at 8 o'clock, and I can't seem to get it switched over, so there's just one last slide. And I also wrote down all your ideas, which I thought would be up there as we were doing it. I have them here. So the next steps, I'm trying to get to that. You won't be able to see it, but I can. There's going to be a second meeting, as I mentioned at the beginning of this, on September 28th at 6:30 in the same meeting space. That's what we have for a tentative date. We will be finalizing that. We're making sure that there's not a terrible number of conflicts. As you, I know, that was the date that was saleable, but I know that there's conflicts. So we're trying to finalize that. I'll take those conflicts out. So we will be confirming that and sending that out to notify me. I'm not sure how you heard about this meeting, but we have a notification system on the town's website. We have something like 3,200 emails on that we send out to people for planning effort. So it's the long-range planning, so it's comprehensive planning, design, and park planning type things. So please sign up for that. That survey is also on that, and we have a webpage. The next meeting is going to be talking about the specifics of those enhancements and design options. It sounds like there's a lot of focus, which we suspected there would be on the east end of the park, where there's those interactions between the area where Arsenal Mall is being rethought, and then also the park in general, the playground, the other areas. And with that, so I have a business card in the back if you have any questions, or if you want to just find out where the webpage is, or if you have any issues. I have a phone number, webpage, community development planning, and if I open up to questions, or if you just want to have big questions or dialogue. And as you leave, there's also those notes of other people who weighed in and had a lot of similar ideas to you, but there might be some other ideas that they could.
Right, so the survey is still accessible to anyone who wants to give any additional ideas.
Yep. And so we're going to keep that up and running for the next couple of weeks, and then we're going to shut that down, and then we'll try to transition to some other series of questions to get some other ideas.
Gideon, are we just going to the town site? Is it on the front of the town site? And a quick link?
There is a link on the front page in the news.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So one thing that's awkward is that we are in the process of transitioning websites, but they've said that our website is going to be continue to run, but there is this weird gap actually right around now. So we, but the survey is separate from the website, and it should be up and okay during this transition.
The other thing that CPD is going to do is taking these maps that you've written on with the stickies and all of these notes, and they're going to consolidate them. And is that going to also be posted on the website?
So what we're going to do is, don't roll up these plans, leave your sticky so that they're readable, and we're going to take a picture of each one of these. We're going to combine it and put it on the website so that everybody can see, and so it will be in a PDF so you can zoom in and look at specific comments. Well, so hopefully the quality will be good enough so that everybody will be able to see that.
Yes, sir.
On the light. So when you're ready, we'll clear it off, we'll take a picture of each of these and make sure that that's all consolidated into one document on the website for the outcome of this meeting.
I just want to say, first of all, thank you guys for making the story interactive, but my second question is, my expression is, beyond the September 2018, kind of what's the town's timeframe, obviously thinking about like what's happening at Arsenal Yards, how are we trying to sort of coordinate our timing on enhancements?
So I answered that earlier in the conversation, but I can try to answer it again. Basically, we don't have a specific time frame. Arsenal Yards has their own time frame. This is a town project and a town effort. So we need to take in what we hear and we need to provide the next meeting. Then we'll know if we need to have a department-run meeting or if we go into the Conservation Commission process. And that's just to get us to a preferred final plan. And then the next step after that is to identify funding sources. And as you know, there's adjacent developments as well as the IQ potential options for some of the funding. So the IQ does have a time frame, but in its entirety, that's 3 years, so it's not.
So in the interest of time, and please don't run away just yet, because I'd love to ask you for your evaluation of this meeting. What did you appreciate about this meeting?
That it was held.
Yes, what else? What did you appreciate about the meeting? Yes, ma'am.
Organized and facilitated.
Yep. Yes, Lisa.
And for just a little bit because of short time, but your story of how people discovered Arsenal Park and how that made a connection to Watertown was really fun.
Oh, and I was talking to Lisa about providing a place maybe on the website for people to tell those stories, which would be fun for us to collect them, to know how they discovered the park. Others, yes?
The small breakout groups in combination with a formal presentation was perfect.
Who else? Yes, Stephen.
The materials you provided were really useful.
Yep.
It's actually quite unusual and I think very effective.
Okay, who else? Yes, sir. Mark.
Number 10, say that.
People who are
Oh, what a great idea.
We can do that. We should do that now.
Well, wait a second. So the idea is to introduce ourselves at the tables as we go around. No, the facilitators. Have the facilitators. Oh.
You can't hear what's being said.
Basically, the people who are running this introduce themselves to all of us so we know what department or who they are.
Okay.
Starting with you, Abby.
What?
Starting with you.
Oh, me. So I have been hired to design and facilitate this event. I'm an executive coach and organizational development consultant.
What's your name? Your full name?
Abby Yano. Yes. And I also work with the Watertown Community Conversations. How many of you have heard about Watertown Community Conversations? Excellent. So there's a small team of us, the founding team, who were interested in promoting public engagement in town and helping town officials and community leaders sort of improve the way that we do public engagement, and also helping people have conversations on controversial issues, on issues that are sometimes difficult to talk about, in a way that's fully respectful and inclusive of all the voices. How did you do, John? Was that a good description? Yeah, excellent. Wait a second, who else helped organize? So you met Vivian?
So let's just quickly go around. So I'm Gideon Schreiber, I'm one of the town planners, and I'm in community development planning. You want to introduce yourself? You're a Conservation Commission member.
Yes, Jamie O'Connell, to the Conservation Commission.
And then at this table,
Danielle Mellett, landscape architect with CDM Smith. Steve Magoon asked me to come and help facilitate tonight.
And so they're our consultant for working on park design plans as well. And they've worked with us on some of the other projects in town as well. And primarily, right now, we're working on the Philip Park dog park and entrance design for CDM Smith. At this table,
Jamie McCann, Commander's Mansion, facility manager.
and at this table, Stephanie. Yeah.
Stephanie Venizelos. My connection to these folks is through the farmers market, which I manage.
And Livable Watertown.
And Livable.
And at this table, Chris Hayward.
Conservation, tree warden, historic preservation.
And he's also in community development and planning. Our department is pretty large as far as the names we have. So this table, Mark Sedaris,
Town Council President.
Lucky number 7, Andrea Adams, and Senior Planner in the Department of Community Development and Planning.
and at the, Abby was at that table in the back, Vinny
Picciarelli, Town Council Vice President.
and Ingrid Marcassano was the last.
That's for last. Ingrid Marcassano, Community Development and Planning.
Could we applaud all the facilities?
Yeah, great job, guys.
Okay, so we introduce ourselves. Other things?
Sorry, it came in.
No problem. Oh, yes.
Hi.
Kate.
Thank you. I was very pleased with having this meeting too, and also the fact that we heard from all the groups, because many times when you do breakout groups, you don't get a bigger picture. And with that in mind, I'll also appreciate the follow-up bigger picture with the pictures so we can really view everyone's thoughts.
Receiving the follow-up, is that it?
Yeah,
Well,
the
yeah,
photographs.
and the photographs of everyone, so we really get to really view
I see,
it.
once it's posted on the website. Yeah.
Yeah, so please, if you do want to get notices updated, you'll have to sign up for that Notify Me, so that when I send out links, people will hear directly about
Yeah,
that.
and it's right on the front page of the website, and you can choose which of the boards and commissions you want to sign up for.
David.
So which one did they sign up for to get this one?
Just to be clear, we have a web page that shows that it's directly linked to the Notify Me, but it's the comprehensive planning, design, and I think it's like open space, and I think it might say something else there. There's a few other ones that are planning and zoning. That's not it. That's our other notification system for current planning activity in town. So you'll find it through the Notify Me on the website, or if you have trouble, grab my card and you can send me an email.
I thoroughly enjoyed the history lesson.
It was great, great.
Absolutely. I think more of that needs to be brought out in each of these meetings.
Okay, lastly, is there anything that we should do, Debbie? Oh, yes, ma'am.
Gideon, could you just restate again what Notify Me people should sign up for to get notices about this?
It's the comprehensive planning, comprehensive plan, long-range planning, and design updates. So this is long-range planning.
Yeah.
But there's a direct link to it as well on the project webpage, which is directly under community development planning as well. So there's like lots of different ways to find it.
There have been 1 or 2 suggestions for improvement. Does anyone have any other suggestions for what we could do differently next time? Yes, Lisa.
Well, just the first brainstorming was super short, because it was supposed to be 2 minutes per person, and we couldn't get around to it. I timed it, and it was 5 minutes total. So just a little more time for that first. Whatever brainstorming, because we...
Okay, very good, thank you. Okay, any other improvements? Going once? And twice?
Well done.
Thank you so much.